Oh, I apologize. I look like absolute shit. It's early in the morning. I don't have my watch on, so I tried to check the time and it's not there. I told myself I was gonna start making a video every day, even if I don't put it out, just make something every day. So I have to clean today. I have to clean the entire house, and then I have a Christmas at 3, my last family Christmas to go to. So this video is going to have to be made periodically while I clean the house. This is 5 things I like about the Sony A7iii and 5 things I dislike. Let's roll it. So I do this with every video, and this video is no exception. I start it, I intro it, I get into the video, and then realize after I film like 1 or 2 shots that there's no microphone on the camera, and I forget to put the microphone on. So I want to revert back to something I said trying to make a previous video, because it really explains the situation pretty well. I just filmed this entire video and then realized I wasn't using my microphone. I was just like, hell with it. Let's use the in-camera audio. That'll be fine. I'm not trying to make good quality videos here. Yeah, that's it.
So casually keep diving into coffee. So bittersweet. Keep losing sleep while driving in the backseat. What's left of me? Drowning in what feels just like an ocean. Negativity is getting closer.
I was too busy trying to film me making the coffee, and I poured like a ton of creamer in, so now I just have like very I have too sweet of coffee. I poured way too much creamer in this. I mean, it'll get the job done. Just a little bit too much. So the number one thing that I like about the Sony A7iii is the autofocus. I spilled my coffee. I'm so sorry if that dishwasher is really loud. Anyway, first thing I love about the Sony A7iii is the autofocus performance, and this is a big one for probably a lot of people, especially if you're using native Sony glass. The autofocus is just speedy quick. It's not as fast with the lens I'm using right now. It's a Tamron, but it still works. I'm in focus, I think. Yeah, I'm in focus. It's phenomenal. I used to use the Lumix G7 and G85, and those are contrast-based autofocus systems, and they just cannot even compare to that of the Sony A7iii. So number one thing that I like is the autofocus performance. I always have to pull my glasses off for this shot because it's always a glare from that lamp, which kind of sucks. The number 2 thing that I like about the Sony A7iii is the low light performance. So I picked the A7iii over the A7R series for one main reason, and that was that I knew I was going to be doing a lot of video. The R series has phenomenal quality because of their much higher megapixel count. I believe the new 4 has like 61 megapixels, and the 3 has like 42, somewhere in that range. Although that gives much better quality and cropping, you can crop all day and have no issues. The more megapixels in a sensor, the worse it does in low light. So for instance, on an A7R4, we have 61 megapixels, and on the A7iii that I have right here, we have 24 megapixels. So if you think about it, both sensors are full frame sensors. They're both the exact same size, but on the A7iii, since there are less pixels, they are gonna be bigger. So since the pixels on the A7iii are larger, that means that they're gonna capture more light. So for another example, the Sony A7S series, since it is more of a video camera than a photo camera, it only has about 12 megapixels the last time I checked, which a lot of people are gonna look at that and be like, 12, what the heck? But it is still gonna be a phenomenal sensor, a phenomenal full frame sensor, it is still gonna have a phenomenal picture, but since it only has 12 megapixels, that camera is going to be substantially better in low light than the A7 III and also the A7R. It's just gonna perform better, that's just how it works. So I wanted something with good quality and good low light, so that's why I went with the A7 III. I feel like it's kind of a nice middle ground between the A7S and the A7R. Alright, so the next two things that I really like about the Sony A7 III are, one, the shooting speed. So I do a lot of concert photography and fast moving subjects, and I also do a lot of street photography, and all of those things involve constantly moving subjects and things that I really can't control. So having that on the Sony A7 III, there is a low, medium, high, and high plus shooting rate, and I believe the high plus is where you get like 10 frames a second, but that shooting rate is perfect for concert photography, street photography, anything with fast moving subjects, unpredictable subjects. That has really came in clutch. And when I get an awesome photo of someone throwing a guitar back, just doing something crazy, a drummer, I need that high rate of fire on my shutter to capture all the movement, capture all the motion, and really get the moment. Along with high rate of fire and high quality, because I shoot uncompressed RAW, comes with a lot of storage that you are taking up very fast. Which brings me to another thing I really like about the Sony A7 III, and that is the dual card slots. So those dual card slots, I can throw 2 SD cards in, that's the only format it takes, but that saves me a lot of the time, because if I'm doing a really important shoot, I can shoot onto both cards at the same time and get that redundancy. So if one card, something were to happen to one card, or one card were to just crap out on me, I would have that second copy with all the shots on it. And then if I'm not shooting something extremely important, but I know I'm gonna be shooting a lot of photos, I can shoot to the first card, and then when that fills up, I can set it to where it'll automatically switch to the second card, so then I don't have to go swapping cards all the time. I have a lot of storage in there. And then another cool thing that you can do with those cards is either record pictures to one and video to one, or you can do RAWs to card 1 and JPEGs to card 2 if you know you're going to be needing the RAWs for your editing and the JPEGs to send off to a client early, or just for sending in any way. You can get JPEGs to one card, RAWs to another, so then you have a very simplified workflow when it comes to actually dumping the photos. You don't have to go in and separate all of them. It makes things a lot easier. Dual card slots, definitely a must-have. I've never had it before, but it was something that I didn't know I needed until I had it, and now I couldn't live without it. I'm not going to be able to buy another camera with only one card slot. This camera has ruined it for me, and that's not like a bad thing. I really enjoy it, but just putting that out there, I'm never going to be able to use another camera that has one card slot again. So I've been filming this video like intermittently in between cleaning my house, but while I'm here and while I have the camera running, I just want to mention my last of the 5 things I like about the Sony A7 III, and that is the 4K no crop. So there's a couple different settings you can use. If you use 4K and 24 frames a second, then there is no crop at all. Now, if you do go to 30 frames a second, you will get a crop. It's like 1.2 though, so if you really want to use 30 frames a second, that 1.2 isn't gonna screw you up too bad. I just see no reason in using it at this point, so I use the 4K no crop when I am using 4K. 5 things I don't like about the Sony A7 III, starting with the flippy screen. So I know that this has been a topic of discussion since the Sony Alpha series came out, but for some reason Sony has still not fixed the fact that there is no flippy screen on the Sony A7 III, the Sony A7S, the Sony A7R. None of those cameras flippy screen. All right, and number 2 is, so one of the things I liked was the 2 SD card slots. So what Sony did was they made the first slot SDXC2 and they made the second slot SDXC1. And what that means is if you have an SDXC2 card, only the first slot can utilize the speed that comes with that type of card and that type of card slot. Card slot number 2 can only do SDXC1, so there's no point in using an SDXC2 card in the second slot. Anyway, make the card slots the same. I don't see any point I don't see any point at all in having two card slots that are different. I think it kind of defeats the purpose, especially when you're going for redundancy. So please fix that, Sony. Another thing that you're gonna hear me bitch about a lot is on the Sony, especially for using it for like a vlog or video camera, it came with these little, you probably can't hear that, but it came with these like dangly clips to put your neck strap into. And like most cameras are just gonna have like a stationary bar that you put it behind. No, Sony they had to put these little dangly things on. So right now I have my Peak Design quick draw straps hooked on to these dangly things, but it just makes it more dangly and noisy. So if you're not using a microphone on your camera, it's gonna pick up that noise. And I've done it accidentally before vlogging, and you just hear it and it's horrible and you can't use it. I'll have to like show you. I'm gonna bring out this. So look at that dangly thing right there. And I couldn't get the Peak Design through this hole once I took out the dangly thing, so I had to put it back. But that's just bad design. That's just a really bad design, Sony. I'm trying not to complain so much because I love this camera, but there are a few things that really, really get to me. So finishing up this list of 5 things that I like and 5 things I don't like about the Sony A7 III, the 2 last things that I don't like are not huge, but I would like if, you know, they were there, lack thereof. Anyway, the 4th item on the things I don't like is the lack of a shooting mode dial on the camera. Now this one isn't very big because they do have that dial on the A7R and I believe the A7S, and I knew that going into the A7 III, and it's just kind of a small extra step I have to take when I'm changing from different shooting modes. It's not that big of a deal, and I know they had to leave some things out since the A7 III is kind of their like lowest end full frame mirrorless camera. So again, no really complaints, but on a list of things that is very hard to find because I love this camera so much, that is definitely one of the things that I wish was there. The 5th one, and again something that can be worked around but something I wish was just implemented into the camera, is an internal time-lapse feature. I am a fan of time-lapses, I love doing them, but when the camera doesn't have the internal setting for that, it just takes a little bit more finagling to get done, depending on if you just do it manually, if you get a remote shutter. There's a few ways to get around it, but I do wish that that was an internal option. And as a little side item, I wish that this camera also had internal double exposure or multi-exposure mode, where you can take a photo and then go and take another photo on top of that photo, and it kind of blends them. My Lumix G85 had that feature where I could take a picture and then I could take a picture somewhere else, and I could do that as many times as I wanted. Blending those photos together can create a cool effect. If you ever see a picture of like someone's silhouette and then inside their silhouette there's like a mountain range or a cityscape or something like that, that is technically a double exposure, but that one is usually done inside of Photoshop or an editing software. Some cameras have that as an internal function, which I think is really cool. It makes you feel like you're kind of shooting on film because it burns that into the photo and you can't change it. That's always a fun feature to play around with, but I didn't use it a lot on the G85, so I'm not necessarily angry about it not being on the Sony A7 III. So wrapping up, those are 5 things I like and 5 things I dislike about the Sony A7 III. I kind of added in a 6th dislike, but I'll group that in with the number 5. So I hope you guys liked the video. If you guys have any comments about features that I left out or ones that you like or don't like, leave them in the comments below. And if you like the video, definitely like and subscribe. I plan to put out a lot more content like this video. Go like, go subscribe, tune in for more content. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. As always, stay happy.